Welcome to Dark 10. Today, we're going to go over 10 horrific air crashes in history. Make sure to watch until number 1, because it's one of the most horrific sea air crashes I know. Air travel is by far the safest mode of transport, but it hasn't always been so. Since the beginning of air travel, there have been a number of major air crashes and accidents involving commercial flights. As the number of people flying increased, so did the number of people killed or injured in plane crashes. What's more, each disaster ushered in new developments and standardizations in aviation safety and technology, making it the safest mode of transportation today. Here are 10 of the worst aviation disasters caused by mechanical failure, human error, or extreme weather. Number 10. China Airlines Flight 140, 1994. China Airlines Flight 140 connected Taipei's Chiang Kai-shek International Airport and Nagoya's Nagoya Airport on a regular basis. Unfortunately, the flight on April 26, 1994, was anything but routine when the first officer on board inadvertently activated the TGA or takeoff, go-around button just before the Airbus A300B4622R was scheduled to land in Nagoya. This button adjusts the throttle to the required position for takeoffs and go-arounds. The pilots attempted to correct the situation, but autopilot, as is customary during TGA activation, thwarted their efforts. The plane pitched sharply, resulting in a stall due to decreased airspeed. Following that, the plane crashed, killing 264 of the 271 people on board. It is still China Airlines' worst aviation accident, and the second worst on Japanese soil. You can take a deep breath now if you're worried about your upcoming flight. Only 2 of the 10 disasters happened in the last decade, which should be a clear indication of current flight safety. While the human cost of such air accidents can never be calculated, keep in mind that each of these tragic events prompted advancements in aviation technology and safety, making air travel safer for us all today. Number 9. Malaysia Airlines Flight 370, 2014. The mysterious disappearance of Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 captured the attention and imagination of many in 2014, when the plane mysteriously vanished on March 8, 2014. The flight was en route from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing when communication with air traffic control was lost without notice or sign of any problems. Despite extensive searches by numerous nations across the southern Indian Ocean, no sign of the aircraft was found until a flaperon was discovered on Reunion Island in July 2015, 3,700 kilometers from the main search site. The search operations were the most comprehensive and costly ever, costing more than $500,000 in just a few months. Experts say the plane changed course for unexplained reasons and then flew until it ran out of fuel. The tragedy is thought to have claimed the lives of all 239 people on board. Number 8. American Airlines Flight 587, 2001. The crash of American Airlines Flight 587 ranks as the second worst aviation disaster in U.S. history. The flight operated on a regular basis between New York City's John F. Kennedy International Airport and Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic's Las Americas International Airport. The flight crashed shortly after takeoff, just a few months after the 9/11 attacks, raising fears of terrorism. The accident was caused by pilot error, according to investigations. The rudder was used excessively in response to wake turbulence caused by a flight that had just taken off. The vertical stabilizer disconnected from the aircraft as a result of excessive rudder usage, and the engines separated from the aircraft shortly before it crashed to the ground. The plane crashed into a Queens neighborhood, killing all 260 passengers on board and 5 people on the ground. Number 7. Air India Express Flight 812, 2010. The Air India Express Flight 812 crash is India's third deadliest aviation disaster. The plane was flying from Dubai to Mangalore. Mangalore Airport is one of only 3 in the country with tabletop runways, which means the runway's length is restricted by hilly terrain and a sudden drop or gorge at one end. A landing necessitates extreme precision and heightened sensitivity. Unfortunately, the aircraft's pilot miscalculated the landing and landed beyond the normal touchdown stage, causing several errors in the process. As a result, the plane sped past the runway and crashed into the cliff, disintegrating and catching fire. Just 8 people survived the crash, which claimed the lives of 158 people on board. Number 6. Air India Flight 855, 1978. Air India Flight 855 took off from Mumbai's Santa Cruz Airport on New Year's Day 1978 for Dubai. The 747 that was used for the flight was the first of its kind, having been purchased by Air India in 1971. Sadly, the plane did not make it very far and crashed into the Arabian Sea just off the coast of Mumbai minutes after taking off. The tragedy occurred as a result of equipment failure and the crew's inability to respond appropriately due to spatial disorientation and their inability to compare AI instrument readings to the actual horizon due to darkness over the sea. In the second worst aviation crash in Indian territory, all 213 people on board died. Number 5. American Airlines Flight 191, 1979. The American Airlines Flight 191 crash is still the worst airline accident in U.S. history, and it also brought the McDonnell Douglas DC-10 into disrepute. The plane's left wing engine separated from the plane just moments after takeoff, flipping over the top of the wing. This resulted in major damage as well as the severing of hydraulic fluid lines. The plane immediately went into a roll, flipped over, and crashed into a nearby field. Investigations found that the crash was caused by the aircraft crew's failure to obey proper maintenance protocols, resulting in the deaths of all 273 people on board as well as 2 people on the ground. Number 4. Turkish Airlines Flight 981, 1974. Because of a design error and the inability of Moroccan baggage handlers to properly read and understand instructions given in both English and Turkish, Turkish Airlines Flight 981 crashed outside of Paris. As a result, the rear cargo hatch latch blew open in mid-flight. As a result of the rapid decompression and severed wires, the pilots lost control of the aircraft. All 346 people on board were killed when the McDonnell Douglas DC-10 crashed into the Ermenville forest, just outside of Paris, France. Number 3. Mid-air collision of Charkhi Dadri, 1996. Charkhi Dadri is a small village west of New Delhi that became famous after a tragedy occurred in its skies. The mid-air crash between Saudi Arabian Airlines Flight 763 and Kazakhstan Airlines Flight 1907 is still the worst aviation tragedy in history. The collision happened when the Saudi flight was taking off from New Delhi and the Kazakhstan flight was preparing to land. The flight paths crossed due to the Kazakhstani pilot's weak English communication skills and the lack of secondary surveillance radar at Indira Gandhi International Airport, and the pilots were unable to avoid a collision. The accident claimed the lives of all 349 passengers on both planes. Number 3. Charkhi Dadri Mid-Air Collision, 1996. The crash of Japan Airlines Flight 123 is now the worst single plane accident in history. When the Boeing 747 crashed into mountainous terrain near Mount Takamagahara, northwest of Tokyo, it was carrying 524 passengers, including crew. The flight was bound for Osaka and took off from Tokyo's Haneda Airport. The unthinkable happened just 12 minutes into the flight. The plane experienced explosive decompression. The rudder and hydraulic systems were disabled as a result, completely disabling the pilot's control of the aircraft. Despite this, the crew was able to keep the plane flying for another half hour until it crashed into a ridge, killing all 520 passengers and leaving only 4 survivors. Number 2. Japan Airlines Flight 123, 1985. A series of tragic incidents culminated in one of the worst aviation disasters in history, beginning with an explosion at Gran Canaria Airport in Spain. A variety of flights, including the ill-fated KLM Flight 4805 and Pan Am Flight 1736, were diverted to Tenerife Airport as a result. The 2 Boeing 747s collided on the ground as a result of dense fog, the lack of ground radar, and miscommunication, killing all 583 passengers on board in both flights, with only 61 passengers from the Pan Am flight surviving. Subscribe Dark 10 and turn on notifications so you don't miss more videos of creepy, interesting, or scary facts and much more. Check out this playlist of my Dark 10 videos of crime and killers and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.